It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today we're going to be talking about the magic candy users and who currently is the best of them. And now, obviously, this is situational in certain scenarios or certain game modes. However, the way I'm going to be posing this is kind of a general, broad kind of who is best. So when I say that, we have Melt Cookie, we have Werewolf, Purple Yam, Rye, Squid Ink, Espresso, and Vampire Cookie. Now, of course, at level 30, all of them get incrementally stronger, and that's going to be a big deal for a lot of different reasons. However, when it comes to just getting to the level 10, that can make a big difference too, according to who's pretty good at that point. So, if we go and look at all the cookies, Vampire, the two biggest things here is obviously getting the extra damage stacks and doing guaranteed crits. Those are going to be very, very helpful things. But the auto revive at the maxed level of 20%, that's like a mini feather, like a level 3, level 4 feather at all times. It pairs really well with the insignia. It is a feather so that you don't technically have to bring feather if you're okay with Vampire being the one that's revived. If you want to bring feather, you technically can get Vampire to revive 2 times, depending on how the team stats are set up. It's a very powerful metric, and Vampire does very, very strong attacks against boss monsters, whether it be PvP, PvE, and even guild boss. Every single time, Vampire is doing pretty strong damage when it comes to most battles. Espresso is really, really good for a lot of reasons. Espresso kind of negates stun resistant teams, whether it be the BTS cookies, the Cocoa cookie, or any potential cookies to come. Anyone that has stun resistance, or I should say stun immunities actually, is going to take extra damage. And as you can see at level 30, stun immune cookies take 390% extra damage, which that's a lot of damage. That's a lot of damage, so that makes a really big difference when it comes to those team archetypes. And sometimes the way you have to build teams is through an archetype, whether it be through speed, or through defenses, or through stuns, or immunities, debuffs. All those are going to make some really big differences in the end. So Espressos can be a really, really powerful one too. Squid Ink is a little bit different. Squid Ink, you kind of need a big setup. You need a cookie that can do defense reduction on the other cookies for it to be more powerful. Yes, Squid Ink does defense reduction against the enemies on its own. Yes, it has the teleportation on the regular skill so that it has some avoidance of death. Yes, it has damage reduction so that it has some self-protection. So there's a lot of good things going on here for Squid Ink. However, with that in mind, you still need setup to really push it to the max limit. Where Espresso and Vampire, they're running strong regardless. They're just going to hit hard every single time, and if you give them any other setup, they hit even harder. Squid Ink was a little bit weaker before the Magic Candy buff, to the point where most people did not run her. And so for that reason, when this happened, the Magic Candy, it was strong, however, it wasn't enough to self-sustain completely. At least not in the meta that we have with Wildberry, Financier, Dark Cow, all of those cookies. It wasn't enough to overpower and overcome. So it needed a little bit of extra setup to really take it to the next level. When we go to Rye Cookie, Rye is a little bit special. Rye kind of is the setup cookie, because Rye's Magic Candy is giving ally attack speed boosts. So the way Rye will probably end up best fitting in the long term is that any new speed comps that come down the road, Rye will likely be a paired cookie alongside them to give those attack speed buffs so that you either A, don't have to run robes, or B, you can run a faster, stronger version of the team. And so that's how you kind of have to look at Rye, as almost like a robes on the go. Very good cookie, very good Magic Candy, awesome against the boss monsters as well. And that burn debuff is also going to be very interesting in the future to see how that ends up playing into effect on other creatures, other cookies, and other setups and team archetypes. So that'll be interesting to look at too. Purple Yam is very, very strong. And the funny thing is, I haven't even gotten Purple Yam's Magic Candy to level 30. Honestly, when I really think about it, I think that Purple Yam is probably within the top 2 of the strongest current Magic Candy users. Purple Yam has self-damage resistance, debuff resistance, which is a huge thing. People don't really think about the debuff resistance when it comes to cookies, but when you give a cookie good debuff resistance, like really good debuff resistance, they're not necessarily immune, but they definitely have more protection against a lot of different archetypes. And I mean like a lot. So it's really, really impactful how much defense or debuff resistance can affect the turn of a battle. And this Magic Candy just self-gives it. And so at level 30, it'd be even stronger. But, I mean, right now at level 21, it's still running very, very strong. So, let's look at a couple others. Werewolf Cookie, only at level 18 right now, doing very, very strong when it comes to injury and relative damage, getting that attack speed, having, just extra damage when it comes to how the targets are lined up. This one's pretty bonkers, pretty powerful. We'll talk a little bit more about that one in a minute, because we're gonna cover Milk real quick. Milk, I think, will make a big impact down the road. I think in the long term, Milk's Magic Candy is going to be very helpful, very powerful. But right now, the current meta just doesn't really give a lot of wiggle room for Milk to make a huge splash. I think there is good potentials for it in the future when it comes to either more relative damage needing to be done to cookies because they have special protections that only that can be the damage, or maybe, legendary HP toppings where the HP is just so huge on Milk that you can never get through. There's a few different things that I think could be used to set it up to make it really strong. But right now I don't see a mega impact from this Magic Candy, and it's probably about the least Magic Candy talked about currently in the current meta. So when it comes down to it though, my current 2 votes for the 2 strongest, just in my opinion, is going to be between Werewolf and Purple Yam. I think Werewolf and Purple Yam can really hold their own in a lot of situations. They're both charged cookies, and I think charged cookies have just a slight advantage when it comes to stats. If you see, their HP is huge, their defense is huge, so if you just micromanage their attack and crit percentages, you're kind of taking care of all 4 stats. Where the other cookies, you have to do a little bit more finagling, and it's a little bit tougher to do so. And so for that reason, I think that they have more survivability and more flexibility when it comes to team building and how they can participate in specific challenges. And as you've seen, they've been used for Alliance really well because they can just make a huge impact. So I'd love to know your feedback and thoughts when it comes to the Magic Candies. Who do you think is currently the strongest Magic Candy user? Obviously, we still have more to come, I'm sure, in the future. But until then, I'd like to have your thoughts on who you think is actually making the biggest impact when it comes to all the game modes. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a wonderful day.